Hi, and welcome to Creating with Cut Files 101. My name's Andrea, and I'm with the Whole Kit N Kaboodle. We're going to do class a little different this time. We are going to take the Creating with Cut Files, and we're going to break it into two separate classes, 101 and 102. We really want to take the time and show you many techniques so you can really leave inspired and with all kinds of ideas on how to use overlays in your projects. If you're unfamiliar what I mean by an overlay, this is what we call a cut file. You can obviously cut it yourself on your die cutting machine, or we sell them on our website as well in this overlay format. If you purchase them from us, the overlays will come packaged, and on the back it will give you two ideas just to kind of spark some creativity on how to use that overlay. So as we're getting ready to get started, we are going to work on the Be Happy class this evening. But before we take out that project to get it going, I'm going to turn you over to Nick. Nick is going to show you a really fun and a really easy technique on using your overlays and your inks. Check it out.
Hello everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to use our chalk inks with our custom overlays to produce beautiful backgrounds for your pages. So I'm going to open the package called Hearts, and I'm going to place it onto the cardstock. Now I'm going to use painter's tape. Painter's tape is very important because it will not tear our cardstock, and we don't want to ruin our beautiful projects, do we? So for this project, I'm only going to need 3 or 4 pieces of tape, and then I will curl them up as you see, and place them onto the overlay. Now I will place the overlay onto the cardstock, and I'm going to use it as a stencil. Usually with hearts, people associate them with red and pink, but I want to do something different, so I'm going to grab Dreamsicle and apply it to the dauber, and then I'm going to daub away. It is very important to get all of the edges of the overlay, both inside it and out. Depending on how old your inks are, you may need to reapply a few times. And now I want to move on to my sandstone. The sandstone I'm using is newer, so I won't have to reapply as much. And now I'm going to daub underneath the Dreamsicle. As you can see, the stencil's moving a little bit, but since I taped it down, the design should remain okay. Next, I want to use my wildflower. I'm going to apply it to the dauber and daub underneath the sandstone. I want to go for something bold, like a sunset, or maybe some rocks in southwest Arizona. I decided that I wanted to be a little bit more generous to gain a deeper shade, so I decided to reapply a little bit more. And now I'm going to return to my sandstone and daub underneath the wildflower. And finally, to sandwich it all together, we're going to go back to the Dreamsicle. Now, when I remove the stencil, I'm going to be very careful not to smear the ink on the page or any ink that might have gotten on my hands. We don't want to ruin our design. And voila! Look at this beautiful project. We did it! Now, I decided to do a second project off camera just to show you that you don't have to use plain cardstock. I decided to use this patterned paper that's kind of a wooden theme. You know, I was thinking a 4th of July barbecue out on the patio. You might notice I used a couple techniques. In some areas I daubed, and others I did more of a brushing motion as if it were a paintbrush. This is really up to you. It's your preference. There are no wrong answers. And in case you were curious, I used our custom overlay called Circle of Stars. I thought it was perfect for this project.
Wouldn't you agree that Nick is like the Bob Ross of the scrapbooking world? He's got that nice, calming voice with the happy little clouds. He's fabulous. And what a great idea is that, right? So now with one stencil, you're getting 2 uses because you have this beautiful project backdrop that you have done using the overlay as a stencil with your chalk inks. But you also have the overlay itself that's just beautiful in all of its various shades of colors there. So you're getting 2 uses out of one overlay, or you can just continue to use this as a stencil over and over and over again, getting all kinds of use just out of the one overlay. We're going to go back to Nick. This time he's going to show you a technique that we're actually going to use in tonight's project. So he's going to tell you how to use pattern papers with your overlays. Back to Nick.
Hello, scrappers! Today I'm going to show you a technique that incorporates overlays and patterned paper. Using this method, you're going to create a wonderful, elaborate background that you might even like more than your photos. So I'm going to open the package which contains the Ray of Sunshine overlay, and I'm going to get started. I am going to take my pencil and my desired pattern paper. I will flip the paper so that the side I want to show is down on the table. Then I will place the overlay texture side down on top of it and start to trace. Then I'm going to grab my scissors and cut slightly around where I traced. That way there will be enough paper to make contact. We don't want any holes or gaps or spaces in our background, do we? So I've cut the piece and move on to the next paper. Again, I take my desired side of patterned paper and have it face down on top of the table. Then I place the template, which is the overlay, texture side down on top of it, and trace. Then I cut around the pencil markings. Now, because of the sunshine aspect, I'm going to go for a beach theme. Heaven knows I could use a vacation with all these limits on traveling. As you see, I am using full sheets of patterned paper. But really, you can use scraps that are big enough. I know us crafty people. Lots of us have either a drawer, a cupboard, or a closet full of scraps of patterned paper that we're going to use one day, and we never do. But this is the perfect opportunity to utilize them. Depending on how many spaces you are filling, this is a perfect time to turn on your favorite show, listen to some music, or pick out an audiobook. Now, I'm going to use liquid glue to adhere the pieces to the overlay. For this project, I'm using Tombow Mono liquid glue. It is important not to use too much. We don't want it smearing all over the paper. Honestly, guys, this is the best part of working for Andrea. I mean, Who wouldn't want to play with all of the pattern paper and cardstock that she has in her store? Ugh, I'm living the life. Okay, when picking a 12 by 12 sheet, I decided to use muslin from My Colors cardstock. I wanted to really emulate the sand that comes from the beach. But you can use pattern paper too. If I were to use pattern paper, I would have done this wooden pattern paper. You know, to emulate the docks on the beach. Take me to Florida already. So now that we have the background done, I decided to make it pop. So I adhered pieces of foam tape. This wasn't necessary, but I think it's fun. And time for embellishments. Sometimes this is the most fun part, isn't it? Plus, we really get to utilize the 3D aspect that the foam tape brought. Now, this looks good. Actually, it looks great. But what's a Whole Kit N Kaboodle project without enamel dots? And we did it! Nice job, guys!
So do you feel inspired and ready to start our project? Let's dive in. We are going to do it a little different. I have actually been teaching this class in person since March. So we're going to start with the right page. So if you pull out the pieces and look at your directions, we need everything for the right page of this spread. So we're actually going to start with this page here. While I was teaching it in person, we just taught just this page alone. So I pre-recorded this portion of the class several months and several inches of hair ago. So let's go ahead and get started again with the right side of Be Happy Always. Let's get started on our Be Happy Always page. So there's several different ways you can use an overlay. In its truest, most basic form, you can just take the overlay and add it directly as it is to your scrapbook page. But as you have already gotten a little taste, there are several things you can do to kind of spice it up and add some extra visual interest. So that's why we always say they're good for beginners all the way through the expert scrappers. I'm going to show you, we're going to expand upon how to add the pattern paper layers behind the openings in your overlay. So this is the one we're going to use in this particular page. So if you notice, we have these spokes here that you are able to see through. We have that negative space. So for this particular kit, we have already done all of the hard part for you. So we have already cut all of those various spokes so that they're all ready to glue. But say you purchased this particular overlay and you wanted to create your own pattern paper that would go underneath and show through those openings. So we'll show you real quick how to do that. If you notice on your overlay, we have a texture side and we have a smooth side. I like the texture side to be up. That to me just adds a little more of the visual interest. So when I go to draw my pattern of my opening, I'm going to work from the back side, so from the smooth side. That way, when I'm drawing it, if I accidentally come up on the overlay, then you're not going to see it because it's on the back, right? So I have my piece of pattern paper here. So if we wanted it so that the floral side of this pattern paper was showing through just one of the spokes, Here's how you would accomplish that. So if the floral side would be the front, again, we're going to work on the back side of that pattern paper. Again, that's just so we won't see that hand-drawn line. So we're just going to draw right inside the opening there. Easy peasy. So then when you go to cut that out, we want to make sure there's a little bit of an overhang there, just a little bit of a lip. That gives something to your adhesive to grab onto so that you can adhere those two layers together. So we're going to use that as a guide, but we are going to go just outside of it, somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch. Just enough so that when we go to adhere those layers together, there's somewhere to actually adhere the adhesive. And no one's going to see the backside, right? So don't worry if the cut's not exactly perfectly straight. So then it would be easy peasy here. So we would be able to add our pattern paper spoke just behind that opening. So we could do it, every couple. So you could actually do this where I have a piece of tape stuck to me. Maybe you wanted to, instead of just doing one, you wanted to do several. So you could actually say if you wanted to use all 4 of those to be that same pattern. So we could draw just along the outside edges like that. And then I'll just loosely give it a cut here. You could also use it just as a circle if you wanted to back just the total overlay so that it was the same pattern that showed with every single spoke. I'm just going to toss this aside here. But you could do something like this, where say every 4 spokes would be a different color. So there's just all kinds of different ways you can use this. I want to show you a quick sample here too before we move on to our page. Here's one that we did for our gnome event, and we're kind of using this background as a firework. So we're using these spokes as what would be kind of the spray from the firework itself. So this is just to show you just another example of how to use that overlay. And just if you're interested, this is a 2-page spread, so this was what the other side of the page looked like. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start by putting together our background sheet here. Get everything prepared, and then we can play with our overlay. So the first thing we're going to do, like always, we're going to use this 12 by 12 blue paper. We just need to cut off that barcode strip. This is the new boy collection from Photoplay. It's just stunning. I love it. This is my color scheme. This is my jam here. And it says that it's boy, but obviously we can use it with any gender. It's really multi-themed as well. So many possibilities with this collection. So I'm just going to cut off my barcode strip. All right, for this next step, if you look at our final page here, we have this striped paper that kind of peeks through our B paper here. And because we only see just the little portion on either side, I really didn't want to go all the way across with a 12 by 12 piece of paper. This is pretty bulky enough the way it is, so I wanted to eliminate some of that bulk, plus it saves paper, right? So in your packet, you have a 6 by 6 square of that striped paper. We actually need to cut it in half. So we're going to cut it at 3 inches. So then you will have 2 pieces that are each 3 by 6. So then we are going to adhere them. They're about in the center of the page. And we're going to adhere one flush to the left and one flush to the right. Just 2 things to remember. Make sure that your stripes are going at the same diagonal. And make sure that they're even. So we want them equal distance from the top to the top of our striped paper here. And it looks like that measurement, not that it has to be exact, but that measurement is about 3 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere both of these pieces here. These are from two totally different collections, but the stripes of this paper work so well with the polka dots of our original paper here. All right, then we're gonna go about 3 inches from the top. I'm gonna use my sample as my cheat sheet here. All right, and then again, make sure that they're equal distance from both sides. So I'm just again gonna cheat here. And then we're gonna adhere the other striped piece flush to the right edge, so that you have something that should look similar to this here. All right. All right, the next step we have here is we have our really fun gold beehive paper here. So we need to cut it down as well. We're gonna cut it down to 11 by 11. And again, all of these measurements are in your class instructions. But we need to cut that down to 11 by 11. So in the end, we're going to just see just a tiny bit of that navy all the way around. But if you look at our final page, that half an inch of navy that shows all the way around here really helps draw your eye down into the center of the page, because that's always our goal, right? So because we have such a dark background sheet and we have a really light color that we're putting, a really bright color there in the center, that really helps confine your eye to make sure it looks down the center of the page. So we're going to adhere, obviously put our adhesive on the back side here. You know, I love bees as far as a theme, as far as a scrapbook page. Obviously, in real life, I'm still a little scared of them. I know they're a necessity, but they're still a little scary. And how about that guy in New Mexico who went grocery shopping? He comes out of the grocery store and in his car was 15,000 bees. Wouldn't that be like your worst nightmare? All right, so we're gonna take that honeycomb paper and adhere it to the center of our page. All right, now we really could just use our overlay just like this. And I really like how the honeycomb paper shows through those spokes. And we really could leave it just like this and it would work equally as beautiful. But we just want to show you kind of how to bump it up just a little bit. I love to mix pattern papers. It's one of my ultimate favorite things when it comes to designing a scrapbook page. So I wanted to bring in all these different little pattern papers as well. So in your bag of goodies, you have the pattern paper sunshine rays here that we have already cut for you. So no need to have to trace or fussy cut. All of that is done for you. Now, depending on where you're going to put your photos, you might want to put your colored spokes somewhere else, and that's totally up to you. I'm going to go ahead and create it just like the sample, but obviously you could put these behind any of these spokes, and it's going to work just as well. You could use it just along the top. You could do as we've done here, where it's a few here, skip one, do some more, every other. Really, it just depends on how you want to showcase your photos. So again, we're going to work on the back side of the page. And just for now, I'm going to remove my background sheet. And because we're working on the background, we also want to make sure we're using the back side of all of our pattern papers here. So I'm going to flip them all over. First, I'm going to lay them out so that I know that I have it as the same as the sample here. So, and again, I'm going to do it exact just for the ease and simplicity of putting it together now. But again, feel free to ad lib here. If you want to exchange these out to really bring in the orange, perhaps. Maybe you want to go more monochromatic and you want to go more with a yellow card, a yellow schematic here for our overlay. You know, have fun with it. There's no exact right or wrong here. But again, I am just going to lay it out identical. And I'm going to lay it out and then I'm going to put all of the pieces together. All right. So it's going to go like that for the sample itself. Now we have the fun part, and we're going to glue every single one of these rays down. Now remember, this is the back side, so we always want to make sure that the back side of your pattern paper is upright, so that when you flip it over, it's exactly how we need it to be. So I'm just going to run my adhesive here, and I'm going to go right along the edge of my overlay. All right, so right along the edge. You want to get it pretty close. We didn't allow a lot of overhang. All right. Just like that. And then we're going to keep repeating that process all the way around. So just one by one, we're going to go all the way around. Again, you want to run that adhesive right along the edge. I would suggest that you're doing this directly on a table that easily wipes up, or you're doing it on a scratch piece of paper. Maybe use your handout, the back side of your handout for this, because inevitably you're going to get some of your glue, if you're using a wet adhesive, some of that is going to leak out just a little, and you're going to get it on the surface below. So if I were you, I wouldn't do this directly onto your background sheet, just so we avoid having that excess glue where you don't want it. All right, and again, just going to keep going all the way around. All right, you could also make this, maybe turn it into a clock. Wouldn't it be fun if you had paper that had like 12s all over it and paper that had 1s all over it, and turn this into a clock? You could use it as someone getting their license and driving for the first time, and use it as the wheel of a car. There's so many possibilities with this particular overlay. Don't forget, as I'm going to go around here, just to remind you, we want to make sure that it's the back side of each of these pattern papers that's upward. So it would be, we're looking at the back side, so that when we flip it over, all of the right sides are facing the right direction. So you constantly have to remind yourself that right now you're looking at the back of the page. So make sure that we see the back side of the pattern papers for all of our spokes. Also, probably not for this specific overlay, but you could also put photos in the negative space or the openings of our overlays. We do carry a pen, a special erasable pen that works really, really well with photos. That way, when you need to draw your pattern onto your photo, it's a little harder to do on the back side of your photo because you need to see it, right? You need to see what it's going to look like. So we have an erasable pen that works really well if instead of pattern paper, you want to put a photo inside of negative space on an overlay. All right, so we have now gone all the way around. All right, and there we go. Isn't that so pretty? It just really adds just a little bit extra visual interest. Again, remember when we put this down directly onto our gold, it was just fine as it was, but now we're going to take it up just one more notch by adding the various different pattern papers. Now, much as I love pattern paper, I do struggle to intermingle a lot of different patterns that are really busy. So if you notice, I've really kept my spokes kind of monochromatic. So they're all in the teal family and have really little patterns. So I picked out the teal from our background sheet. And just used a monochromatic version of each of those. You could do that with any of the colors. As I said, you could pull out the reds, you could pull out really, really light yellows perhaps, the teals like we did, some oranges. Just kind of depends on what your photos are, what the look you're going for. Alrighty, so now we're going to adhere this to the center of our page. So I'm going to put a lot of adhesive in the center, and then I'm just going to go down through some of the spokes here. And then we're going to just adhere it to the center of our page. All right, it is a circle, so there's not really like an up or down or a right or wrong. It just kind of depends on where your spokes are, right? All right, so you have a sheet of 12 by 12 cardstock in your pack, and that's for the photo mats. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my photo mats, but obviously you can cut them any way that you want to that would fit your photos the best. I'm going to go ahead and cut them just like the sample. And if you cut them just like the sample, we do give you the exact measurements if you want it to look just like the sample itself. So I have two photo mats that are 3 3/4 by 5 1/4. 3 3/4 by 5 1/4. And then I have a photo mat that's 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. All right, so if you know you want your photos identical to that, then you could go ahead and adhere these down. I'm going to leave these loose, and then I'm going to put all of our die cuts together, and then I'm going to show you how you could rearrange your page if you want it to look a little different than this. So we're going to set this aside just for a minute, and then we're going to put together all of our die cuts. So in your bag, go ahead and pull out all of those various die cuts. And we're going to adhere together all of the various pieces here. Oops, I forgot the dot there. All right, doesn't really matter what order we start in. I'm going to go ahead and start with the word always. So obviously we're going to mat the 2 layers together there. So I'm just going to run a little string of adhesive on the back of my always. And if you noticed, I did use my Nuvo glitter marker to add a little sparkle and just a little more interest there to that to that die cut. So once I get my A glued down, I'm going to use my Anthemium blue, and I am just going to write it just as if I'm writing it. I'm going to draw down the center, just exactly following, just if I was writing in cursive. All right, so we're going to go just down the center of every letter, kind of in a really fluid motion there. Again, just so it looks just like I'm cursiving the letters just as they are meant to be. My handwriting isn't this neat at all, so this is a great way to cheat there. I know when I get a handwritten note from my grandma will be 88 this year. She always writes in cursive, and it's so distinctive. I just treasure all of those notes that I get from her. And I tell you, when my boys get those notes from her, they often say, "Mom, what's that say?" Because they have no idea. Even though they went to Catholic school and were taught cursive, they still, since we don't hardly use it anymore, they don't really know cursive very well. All right, for our centers of our flowers here, I did ink them just a touch there. So both of those centers, I just inked it with the mahogany. And then when I adhered each of these centers, I used a 3D foam square. I've actually cut a strip here. Because this is such a tiny, tiny little spot, I am going to use my Tim Holtz scissors. That way they're a little resistant to that goo that you get from the foam. And I'm going to add the center of each flower using just a little, add just a little dimension there. It's amazing what ink and pop dots can do, just a plain old colored cardstock. All right, I'm going to peel off that back. And we have the center of this flower here. All right, we didn't do anything to our green vines, so we're going to leave them just as they are. So now we have the word bee. So we're going to add just a little bit of adhesive and add those two layers together. I'm going to get off some of that excess adhesive there. All right. And then we have the word happy. That's a 2-layer as well. So we're going to add the 2 layers of the word happy together. I didn't use a lot of ink on this page, but you are more than welcome to add it wherever that you would see fit. All right, now we have our adorable little bee here. So we're going to add our brown portion of our body to the yellow. And then on our wings, I'm going to go back to our Nuvo marker and I'm going to accent the bottom of our wings here. So I'm just going to draw that little glitter line just along the base of our wings. And then I'm going to use the 3D foam squares to adhere the wings to our bee. Again, just to add just a little bit more of a visual interest to that. It's just a way to kind of take just your basic and simple cardstock and really bring it up a notch where it almost looks like a purchase sticker than just a normal little die cut, just by adding the Nuvo glitter and by adding dimension there on our wings. All right, so now we have all of our die cuts ready. So I'm going to go back to our page here. So, and then I'm just going to play around. So again, depending on exactly how you needed your photos to go, we could do this all sorts of ways. Maybe you have a lot of photos. So we could put our title, let's see, Be Happy always. I'm just gonna just rearrange just to kind of give you some options. And then we have our little bee. And then we're gonna tuck a flower in that vine. Maybe tuck another one in there. So here we've kind of just taken it all and scrunched it down here. That way it gives you all of this room to kind of add your photos. We could do it so it's just along one side. So instead of going on two sides, we're gonna space it out here and add everything just on one side. Let's see if we add that like so. And then we could take our little flowers, kind of tuck one in there, and tuck one in over here. So here we've kind of put it all on this side. So again, it gives you a lot more room over here as well. So just because I have it like this, obviously you need to move it around at what's going to work best with your photos, right? But for the sake of the sample, I'm going to go ahead and put it together just as we have it on the sample. So I'm just going to go ahead and start adding all of our fun layers here. You notice that you do have one that's kind of longer than the other, so I'm going to start with that one. I'm just going to add adhesive just down the center. There's no need to add it to every single petal there. And we're going to add it about there. Then I'm just going to keep working my way around. Again, I'm just going to go just down the center stem. And we're going to add another one along that spoke. I'm using the spokes of my overlay as my guide as to where to put all of these pieces here. All right, and again, I'm just going to add adhesive right to the center of my flower. No need necessarily to add it to the petals. And then we do have a sticker sheet. So in your packet, you have your sticker sheet. And when I adhere these, I'm going to add just a little bit of extra adhesive just to make sure that they stay. You will need some of these for the other side of the page as well, so just keep that in mind. You don't have to use the exact ones that I do, of course. This is just going to give you kind of a little bit of a, maybe a little bit of an inspiration of how they could go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add some of my photo mats here. So we have one that's vertical, though most of us probably take our photos vertical now if we're working with our cell phones. But I'm going to go ahead and add a horizontal one here. I'm going to slip it just underneath the top edge. About right there. Okay. All right, with those two in place, then I can go ahead and add some enamel dots. In your bag, you have, and everybody's are going to be just slightly a different color. We have some enamel dots. These are just purely for embellishments. So I'm going to add a few down here. I just love how easy it is to add dimension with the enamel dots. All right, when I go to adhere my title, where it overlays my photo mat, I don't want to put any adhesive. That way I can slip my photo underneath later. So just anywhere that any die cut overlaps my photo mats, I'm just going to make sure that there's not adhesive there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and adhere again, just adding adhesive down the center of the vine, not going out to the petals. You are welcome to. To me, I just didn't think it was necessary. It's going to stay down just at the stem. All right, then I'm going to add my other photo mat here. Oops. Okay. Now, on my word happy, I did use the 3D foam squares. Again, that's personal preference. It just kind of depends on how lumpy that you like your page. I have already cut a strip here from my big roll, so I am just going to use it since it's already cut for me. Again, going back to the Tim Holtz scissors. I like for when I pop a die cut, I really like for there to be a lot of pop dots. I want it to lay even in my album. But again, that's kind of personal preference as well. When it goes to adhering it down to the page, to me, you don't necessarily need to pull every single backing off. It's gonna stay in its spot by just making sure that some of those are taken off. So I'm gonna do a little bit there. And then we're gonna get the top of the A. Like I said, I really like to make sure it gets all little of the little portions here, but you don't really need to peel off every single piece in this instance. We just needed enough so that it's going to stick to the page. And it can be so frustrating to get all of those off, so why go through the frustration? All right. So we're going to add our word happy. All right, and now we have our word B, and then we'll have our shape B. All right, I'm going to go back to my sticker sheet here. So we have our adorable little watering can. I'm going to add just a tad more just to make sure that it sticks. I'm going to pop out that little section of the handle. And I am going to intertwine it just a little there with our word B. Like so. And I'm going to add our little bee creature. Okay, almost done here. We're going to add adhesive just to the center of our flower. And then we have just a few more stickers here. I'm going to add this little banner in the upper right corner. I'm just using it purely as an embellishment, but you could put a date there if you wanted to. It's just enough space that you could do that. We have that other little vine I'm going to use to embellish our flower. All right, and then just have fun with your enamel dots, just however you think is going to work well for your photos and your page. All right. And we got one more little lonely one here. Maybe we'll put that in a 3-pod. All right, lo hicimos, we did it. All right, there we go with our Be Happy Always overlay side of our spread. Now that you've completed the hardest part of the 2-page spread, are you ready to finish it up? This page should come together rather quickly compared to our first page here. So remember, when you're looking at your directions, we're actually now going to work on the left page of the spread. So to start off with, we have this B paper, the same paper that we used on the other side. We use that as our background. Now you're welcome to go ahead and use the B paper just like I did here, or you're welcome to use this side of the paper as well. They both really work perfectly for our design. If you use this side, it really helps bring that the same page, that paper that we used on the coordinating side, it really brings that over. But even if you stick with the B side, we do throw in that little hint there of that same paper. So again, it's whatever your preference is. So since we have the sample with the B side, I'm going to show it here with the honeycomb side up. That way, in the end, you can see the difference and see what both look like as well. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and cut off that barcode strip. Alrighty. Then once we have that barcode strip cut, then we have a piece of navy pattern paper and we've left it as a 12 by 12. So you're actually going to have quite a bit of extra paper when you come to complete these 2 pages. That way you can kind of spread it out and maybe make some additional coordinating pages that would all match the 2 that we're creating this evening. So in your packet, I want you to take out that 12 by 12 sheet of navy blue cardstock. And we need to cut that down, and we need to cut that down to 7 1/4 by 11 1/2. So I need you to use your math skills here. We need it to be 7 1/4 by 11 1/2. Then once you have that cut, then we're going to go ahead and adhere it to the page. We're going to adhere it vertically, and it's about 1 1/2 inches from the left edge. So it doesn't have to be exact, but it's around 1 1/2 inches from that left edge. I'm just going to run my adhesive here on the back and go ahead and put that blue down. Again, in case you missed it earlier, the original sample, the background we use was the B side of this paper. Both sides work really well. So I'm not going to do it exactly as the original sample. I'm doing it with a honeycomb side up just so you can kind of see the difference there. So we're going to adhere that navy blue cardstock. It's about 1 1/2 inches or so from the left edge. We're going to use those honeycombs as our guide if you're using this side to kind of get that piece straight there. All right, so now we want to, if you look at the back here, we have this series of pattern papers that will be adhered on top of this navy blue. And again, it's because I love to mix all the pattern papers, and I really love to bring all of those different patterns into the page. So we're going to put 3 different pattern papers in this spot here. So the first thing we have is this blue floral here. So in your packet of goodies, the stripe and the blue floral is actually the same paper. We're going to go ahead and cut that blue floral there, and it's 4 1/2 by 7. 4 1/2 by 7. And that's the light blue floral side that you see here. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere that at the top. And because of the way we cut it, you should see just a tiny little border of the blue showing all the way around this light blue floral here. Just like so. From that same piece of paper, we're going to go ahead and cut the stripe for the bottom of the page. So again, it's the exact same paper we just used for the light blue floral. Now we're going to cut the striped paper. And that striped paper is 6 by 7. 6 inches by 7 inches. 6 by 7. And it's going to adhere down at the base of the page just like this. These extra pieces, depending on how you cut it, these are all extra. So we won't need these anywhere else on the page, but I would keep them in case you wanted to, create an additional page that would coordinate here with the two that we're creating this evening. So let's go ahead and add our adhesive and go ahead and adhere the stripe at the bottom of our blue cardstock. And again, we're going to leave just that tiny little border of blue showing all the way around. And now we have that little piece that's in the center there. And you have another full sheet of this. And all we're going to do is cut this little 1-inch portion here. So again, you're going to have a lot of extra paper in this kit. That way you can create additional projects that would coordinate. So for this paper, it's 1 by 7. So 1 inch by 7 inch. There's our 1. And our 7. Now, since I am using the honeycomb side for my background for this sample, I will want to flip this so that it's the bee side that's showing for this version of the sample. So if you're doing it exact as the original, we would have the bee as the background and then the honeycomb as the 1-inch strip. And this one, I've simply just reversed them. And we're going to adhere that 1-inch strip just in between those two first pieces. All right, like so. Now you're welcome to go ahead and cut your photo mats, or if you don't know what the photos are going to be yet, you can go ahead and just skip this step for now and go ahead and put all of your die cuts together. But I'm going to go ahead and cut my photo mats as I usually do. And again, we've given you all of these dimensions in your directions in case you wanted to do it identical to mine here. This is the Tropical Splash from the Canvas collection of my colors. I'm sure it's one that you've seen before. I tend to use this color a lot. Maybe because I have 3 sons, right? I'm very much into the blues. We have the last mat here that's 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. All right, I think it's also because it's a color that reminds me of like the ocean and summer, and I am a summer girl through and through. Bring on the 90-degree days. Don't stick me in the middle of winter ever. All right, so I'm just going to lay those in place for now. And then we're going to work on putting all of our die cuts together. So in your bag, you have all of the die cuts for this page here. And then we're going to embellish it up with that same chipboard embellishment stickers that we used on the first page. So I'm going to set this aside just for a minute and we're going to pull out our die cuts. You have your additional set of enamel dots for just this page here. And then we have all of the die cuts for this side. I'm going to go ahead and pull all of those out. And you notice that we've used a lot of the same die cut shapes on this side as we did from our first side, just to bring that continuity to show that it is a 2-page spread. It's pretty rare that I use the exact same pattern paper for both sides when I'm working on a spread. I know there are several of you that like that, and that is perfectly okay as well. I just like the difference when the two papers coordinate and don't exactly match. But because of that, I do like to bring over a lot of the elements from one side to the other to say, hey, I really do mean that these go together. So we're not going to do anything with our vine, but we are going to ink around the edges of our sun here. So that orange center of our sun, I did ink that with barn board. So I am just going to go direct from my ink pad all the way around that circle. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and adhere the center of my sun to the rays. We have another little bee here, and we're going to handle the bee just like we did on that first page. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere the brown body just as we did the first time. Looks like I'm clogged again. All right. There we go. We're going to go ahead and adhere the bee, the brown portion of the bee body, to the yellow. And just as we did the first time around, I'm going to take my Nuvo glitter marker and just put just a little bit of an accent on the base of those wings. Just like so. And then I'm going to use the 3D foam to attach those wings to the bee. We'll just add just that little bit of dimension, and again mimicking just like we did on our right side here with our left side. All right, so go ahead and add those wings, and then we'll set him aside as well. For each of our flowers, we are going to, again, we're going to mimic exactly what we did on the other side of the page. And we're going to ink the brown centers lightly with our mahogany chalk inks, and then use that 3D foam to adhere the center of each to their flower. All right, that is a brand new ink pad. I have ink all over my fingers. All right, so we're gonna add, let's do this. And I might get by with cutting one of these in half and then not using my roll. Let's see how that works. There we go. All right, so now we're going to add the center to each of those. And again, just like the other side, I did not ink the flower itself, but you absolutely would be welcome to do that. Maybe like a Caribbean blue would be a really nice touch if you wanted to accent your flowers. by inking each of those petals there. And one more. All right, so now we have all three of those flowers done. So the only thing we have left now is our title. We do have these individual letters that we will need to adhere. I am going to start with a blank slate. So I'm going to start with the white. I always like to just kind of lay it out just to make sure I have the spacing all correct. And then I'll go ahead and add my adhesive. So to our green layer, we're going to add our white. And then don't forget also, you will have a dot of the eye, so that should be in that bag there somewhere. Sometimes it's hard with all of the little tiny pieces. So now we have the dot of the eye and life. And now we have the word love. So we have the orange layer of love. So let's go ahead and put our adhesive and adhere it to the white. And now we have all of those individual letters. Now I'm going to go ahead and lay them in place. And then I'm going to adhere them down. Now I always say that it doesn't have to be perfect, right? People are looking at your photos. Obviously, they're going to see the beautiful pages that you've created for your photos, but the highlight's really the photo. So if they notice that your T's a little crooked, well, maybe they're looking at it a little too hard. So I always say that, but I'm not very good at following that rule. So I tend to like everything spaced out exact, so I lay it all out first. So for simplicity's sake, I'm going to go ahead and put just a little puddle here of adhesive so that I can dip these letters. And that way I don't have to go back to my bottle of adhesive for every single letter. It's also good because as I do that, I can kind of wipe off some of the excess and get a nice thin coat of adhesive there. Hold up my eye. All right, I just love this title here too. You know, we use the word love, the same word love, to mean so many things, right? We love French fries. We love scrapbooking. We also say, I love my child. I love my spouse. I love my pet. There's so many ways and so many depths to the word love. But to say in love, I think really is a much more powerful statement. And I hope we all kind of feel in love with life right now. All right. So there we have all of our die cuts together. So this one you won't believe together how quickly it's going to go together for us. I always tend to do a more difficult side and a more easy side when it comes to the designs. So we definitely started with the harder one. And again, I'm just going to lay everything out here. Since I'm doing my photos exact, I'm going to go ahead and adhere this small little photo. And I'm going to adhere it in that upper corner of our blue floral. And that's going to give me kind of an idea for the spacing for my title. So I'm just going to go ahead and lay it out. That way we can kind of rearrange and see how it fits and what we need to add. And then of course, don't forget about your stickers there. So I'm going to pull off this one. Whoops. I accidentally pulled the layers of the chipboard. There we go. We'll just stick that back together. All right. I'm going to go ahead and adhere my sun because I think I have kind of the general idea there of how all of that's going to go together. All right, and we've pulled the orange here from our striped paper. I say it every class, but I really like to use striped paper because they've taken all of these fun different shades of colors that all purposefully coordinate with each other. That way we can kind of pull out so many different color schemes without really thinking on our own. We don't have to think what's complementary, nothing at all. It's already done for us. So I've really pulled out that orange there, and see how that really makes that stripe really pop with just that little splash of orange that we've added. All right, now we're going to add our fun little bee. All right, and I am again going to add just a little bit of extra adhesive. I always do that to my chipboard stickers just because sometimes as they're stored in the various warehouses along the way, they can lose just a little bit of that tackiness. So that way I can make sure that that's going to stay. All right, we got one more chipboard sticker here. And it's gonna go, how about like there? All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and add these two photo mats. Again, if you don't know exactly where your photos are going to go, that's okay. You can actually go ahead and get everything else together and then just rearrange as you have your photos ready. I am just going to mimic my sample there, and I'm not going to push it down quite yet because I think it's over just a little too far. All right, let's try here. See what I mean by I tell you not to be picky, it's just paper? I wish my mind could not be so picky. All right, so now when it comes to adhering the title here, I am going to use the 3D foam. But part of our title is going to overlay our chipboard sticker, which already has some dimension. So if you are going to add your pop dots to your title and you are putting it together just like the sample, don't put any of your pop dots under the word "in," because then that would really make that super thick going on top there of that chipboard layer. So I am going to avoid this little spot here and just add my 3D foam all over the rest of that title. This to me is when this strip really comes in handy. That way we don't have to sit and do all of those tiny squares, though I would definitely do that so that I could make sure that entire piece is covered. All right, and then I'm going to go back in with some of my tiny ones and kind of fill in that little gap there. I think we got her pretty good here. Maybe we'll put a couple more there and maybe just a little bit at this tail. I've mentioned it before, but if you were doing this on your own and not as a kit, when you were die cutting this shape here, you could also die cut this shape in craft foam. So your craft foam is going to get you an exact pop dot of that exact shape. And that way you wouldn't have to use all the little pieces of foam squares. Just run it back through your die cutting machine and then just add your adhesive to the craft foam. And then it's a perfect pop dot. All right. So we're adding our title there. All right, now we're going to go ahead and add our vines and our flower. And again, we're almost totally done with this side of the page. It seems to go together much quicker than our first one, though it definitely packs just as much punch. I think it's still very well balanced between the titles and the embellishments and all of the various die cuts. So you're still going to get a very sophisticated page in a little less time than it took us the first page. All right. And again, I'm just kind of eyeballing here. There's no exact for these. So no need to measure. We can just kind of look at the handout there that has the color photo of what the finished product looks like here on your screen. That way we can just kind of put those where we think they'll fit in. Now all we have left to do, the enamel dots. So again, these are kind of randomly spaced as well. So I'm just kind of gonna dot my page. You know how much I love these. I use them all the time, and you're gonna have plenty of extras when it comes to the enamel dots. So again, you're gonna have all sorts of extra paper, extra embellishments. You could easily just add just a few sheets of cardstock and easily create a few more pages with this exact color scheme. All right, I think we're done. Perfect. So see here the difference between using the honeycomb side and the bee side. They both work really well. So this is what it would look like if you were adding the honeycomb as your background, or if you left it as the original sample. See how it's just a little bit brighter? So maybe if your photos are a little darker, this would be a great alternative to you. And if your photos are a little lighter, this would be a great alternative to use. Again, either are going to work perfectly because we've used all of the same papers on both sides. So hopefully you've learned a little bit about using overlays while we have put together this 2-page spread. Now for 102, we are going to dig just a little bit deeper. So we're going to go take it a little more advanced in some further knowledge of using these overlays in your projects. So as always, make sure if you have any questions as you're putting these together, give us a shout. That's what we're here for. It's never a bother. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know what you would like to see. And then show us. We would love to see your samples with your photos. It's dramatically different when you put your photos on and they really come to life. Thank you so much for joining Nick and I this evening. As always, happy scrapping.